What's your name?
My name is Jean. Jean.
And where were you born?
I was born in Romania.
Where's that?
It used to be Austria, but after the World War, Romania took it over.
And how many brothers and sisters did you have?
I had 3 brothers and 1 sister.
Tell me about
My
them.
brothers are dead. The only one, I don't know where Henry is, but the only one that's left is Augusta, my sister. My youngest brother, was the baby, I don't know where he is. That's it.
Tell me the names of your brothers.
One was Morris, Sam, and Henry, and my sister's Augusta.
And tell me who was the youngest and so forth?
The youngest was Henry, and Morris was the oldest, and then Sam, and then I came, and then Augusta, and then Henry. We were 5 children.
And what was school like?
School, I don't remember much. It's not a word. I was maybe 10 years old when I came to this country. I don't remember nothing about it. I went to school, but I don't know anything about it.
You once sang a school song to me, for me.
Yeah, the Romanians
Let me
took
hear
it
that.
over, so they taught us, how did it go? Patriciano.
Romania?
Romanian. I don't remember. That was just like they sing here, the song. I live, what do they sing here? I don't.
America?
Yeah. So that's that we sang Romanian. Like they say, pledge allegiance and all that.
Let me hear a little
And
of it.
let me hear, and America and all that, and they sang Romania. What else do you want to know?
What did your father do?
What?
What type of work did your father do?
My father was a painter. He painted houses. And my brother was a painter, and if anybody made bacon, he would go out of the house and say, "Do you want me to paint? You can't make bacon." He did like that smell, and he wouldn't eat that.
Did your father do artwork too?
Kind of work?
Did he do artwork? Or
No, he didn't do artwork. He was just a house painter.
And you once told me he used to study a lot.
Who used to study?
Your father.
Study? No, he was a very educated man and Jewish. He was the only boy. He had, I think, 3 sisters. And he was born, and his father was a rabbi. So he was educated.
So your grandfather was a rabbi.
Yeah. So he was, my father was very educated. He was supposed to be a rabbi. But so happened that he wasn't. He didn't, but he was very educated in Jewish. He can read the Jewish paper and everything.
Did you go to a special Jewish school?
For me, I went to a Hebrew, sure.
And did you
When I
learn
was in school here in America, I went to Hebrew.
to Hebrew school?
Or maybe it was, yeah, well,
Or maybe it was Romania?
maybe Romania. I don't remember that really.
What was it like being Jewish in Europe in those days?
What?
What was it like being Jewish in Romania when you were a child?
I don't know. It was all right. It wasn't like today. It was all right.
Tell me about your trip to America.
Who?
Your trip to America.
Yes, I remember on the boat I was very nauseous. The only one that wasn't nauseous was my brother Morris. He was all right. All of us were sick and we were throwing up. I was so nauseous. I told my mother, "Why did we have to go?" She said, "Well, don't you want to see your father?" I said, why didn't he come and get us? I'm sick, I can't take that.
So your father went to America
He
ahead of
went
you.
first, and he had to work, save up money so he can send tickets for us.
Do you know the reason he left Europe?
What?
Do you know the reason he left Europe to come to America?
Do I know what?
Do you know why he came to America? What was his reason?
My mother's brother took him there.
But what made him leave his family to go to America?
I don't know. I was a little girl. I didn't ask questions like that, and I didn't know it even. What did I know? I was only a little girl. I didn't know what. They took me, I went. I didn't know of anything like that. Why, when, or what. That really, I didn't know nothing. I was only a little girl, and whatever my mother took me, I went.
So you and Augusta were on the boat together.
Yeah.
All the children were on the boat. Was it a nice ride over?
Yeah, it was very nice. And my sister used to sleep with my mother when my father left. So when she came here, she wanted to only sleep with her too. And she wanted to sleep with her husband. So she cried. She was only a little girl. She was about 8 years old. So she cried. She only wants to sleep with her mommy.
And when you got to America, where did you live?
We went to school.
What state?
Huh?
What state?
What state? In America, in Harlem we lived.
In Harlem. Wow.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was nice. There was a park there and everything. She's still on the phone. One guy that, what should we call it? I worked in a place, and I was painting and scarves, and I was the only one left there. So he went over. He wanted to touch me, so I ran away. So I ran all over, and he ran after me. Oh boy! And I ran. I was supposed to get married in a couple of weeks, and he ran after me like any. Then his partner came in, so he quit. So he had to stop. And the next day he called me, "Are you coming to work?" I said, "Well, who's going to work? Who else is coming in?" He says, "I'm calling you again, and you're asking me such a question." So I didn't go. He ran after me, a big, tall guy.
He wanted you to sleep with him.
I guess so.
So in today, wait.
I went to a dance, and he asked me to dance with him. I asked him for a cigarette, and he said he doesn't smoke. And then he said he'll take me home. And he took me home. He took my number and he called me, and that's how it started. And he called me, and that's the way it started.
How did Augusta and Danny meet?
Augusta and Danny? I don't know, but I never asked her, and she never asked me questions. Oh, I think I know how she met him. Augusta came to visit me, and she went down to go home. So he was in a car, and he stopped when he saw her, and he asked her if she wanted a ride. And she went in, and that's how she met him. And he liked her. She was beautiful. And that's how they went out.
So when you were a teenager, did you work?
When I what?
Was it when you were a teenager? What's the first job you had?
I was working in a 5 and 10. And I was so good they made me a floor lady. took care, I used to fire and hire and everything. And then I went down with the manager to the stock room to order stock. I knew everything, and I was only 16 years old. And he asked me something, and I told him what to order. So he took me around. Are you sure? He said, you need that. So when I went up, I had the information desk with my friend. So I went over to her and I told her. And he heard it, he came up. So he So one of the girls in the hardware counter, she gave some stuff away for nothing. So he fired me for that, because I was supposed to watch. But he had it in for me because he was afraid. He started up with me and I told the girl.
Was this the one who wanted you to sleep with him?
No,
This was a different one.
that's a different.
Tell me about that job.
And then I had another one that I was working in a place, and we went home. So they said the boss, Mister, I don't remember his name, wants to see you upstairs. I said, I am getting fired. And I went upstairs, so he said to me, you know, you don't have to work. I said, what do you mean I don't have to work? I need it. He says, well, I can keep you. I can't marry you, but I can keep you. I said, nah, I'm sorry. No.
It sounded like a good opportunity.
Yeah.
Where do you want to keep you?
I don't know. He wanted to keep me up. I guess I see him get an apartment and, you know, what they do. I should be his mistress. I was a kid, maybe I was 17 years old.
And was he married?
No, he wasn't married. He lived with his sister.
And how long did you continue after that?
Then I worked there for a couple of weeks and his sister fired me.
His sister fired you?
Because
Why?
she found out that he wanted me, so she fired me. She said that I did something wrong.
Did you get fired from all your jobs?
No, I quit. When they started up with me, I quit.
Was this a continual thing?
What?
Where you work at a job and then they want to sleep with you and then you get
They
fired?
all wanted to sleep with me. I must have been gorgeous. Everybody went to sleep with me.
And then you married Ben. Tell me about Ben. What did he do?
He was an upholsterer, you know that. He was working too hard. You better tell her to get off the phone. They're already an hour. That's Colby.
Tell me about Ben. Come on.
There's nothing to tell. He was a very hard-working man. He was very, very good to me. He was good to the children. Everybody called him the mother. They said, you just had him, but he raised them. At night, they wouldn't call me and Mommy. They called Daddy. He did everything for them.
Where was he from?
From Russia.
Did he speak Russian?
Yeah, I think he did. Maybe a little bit, not too much.
Did he have parents
And he had
or
a
family in
father,
Russia?
but his mother died. But he had a father.
What did his father do in Russia?
I don't know.
Did you meet his father?
Yeah, sure. Amy is named after him. Your sister Amy is named after him. His name was Abby. So it's Abby. Go tell her to get off the phone. That's enough. He had to go to work. That guy worked day and night. He worked day and night. If it's Sunday, he had a job. If he was off Saturday and Sunday, so he worked. He used to go working for another upholsterer. He worked day and night. That's all he did was work. Work and work and work and nothing.
Grandma, tell me about this painting.
That's Grandpa Ben worked for some girls. He did something for them. I don't know what. So instead of paying him, they gave him this picture. He wanted it. He fixed something for them.
Was that common for people to give him paintings and chairs?
Why not? If he wanted to buy it from them, he would have to pay, right?
Right.
It's the same thing.
Did he have a reputation in New York for the work that he did?
Well, they all know, in the factory that he was very good. They used to call him the man with the golden hands. He used to make, those big couches.
Right.
The tufting and it was wonderful. He did a lot of good work. He did samples they used to give him to make. He was very, very good. He was a very, very hard-working man.
When did he buy his first car?
I don't know.
Do you remember the car?
Oh, you mean that when I was married to him, he bought a Ford, a red Ford. It was very good. And then he had a Chrysler. He had a Dodge. And a Chrysler New Yorker. Oh, that was a beauty. A white car.
How many children did you have?
2.
Tell me their names.
Elaine and Doris, you know.
Tell me about Elaine.
Elaine? What am I going to tell you about Elaine?
Was she a good student?
She was an excellent student. She had about 2,000 honor certificates, and she went to a honor school. She throughout the whole high school. She was an honor student, very good. But college like that.
Did she ever get in any trouble?
Never. You know that we lived on the ground floor. Where was it? On Fair Street in the Bronx. So all the girls were walking with. Elaine was also walking with a fellow with this. So he opened the window. He says, "Elaine, I want you in the house." She came in. She came, and your mother, I must tell you that.
Okay, let's talk about your other daughter now.
Your mother.
What was her name?
Doris. But
Now
she had a girlfriend. What was her name? Gloria. So it was about 9 o'clock already. Gloria calls her up and she had to come to the bowling alley. She met some nice guys there. And she was a baby. She was 16 or 16 years, Doris. Maybe 15, 16. Because at 18 she was already married. So she said, "I'll be there." And she gets dressed, and her dad said, "You can't go." She gets dressed. She wants to go. She opens the door and goes. He pulled her in by her legs. She wouldn't let her go. So there was a newspaper in the house, so she tore it up into little pieces all over the house. She was mad, but he wouldn't let her go.
Now, would Elaine have done something like that?
Never. Elaine never gave me a day's trouble.
So Doris was a little more wilder.
She was wild. She was a good girl. That's what the girl called her, said she wanted to go. Listen, you would want the same thing. So she wanted to go, but she didn't bother. Otherwise, she was very good.
Tell me about Doris now.
Doris was, I see when she was just 18 in January. And in January, she comes over to me. We were watching television. I'm going to California to get married. So I don't pay no attention to her. I just let her talk. A kid, she talked. So later on, she says, "I'm going." And she started crying that she's going. I said, "You're not going." But then we decided to let her go. And we bought her clothes, and we bought her, put her on the plane. And when she met Marty, picked her up. And your father.
Was that the first time you met Marty?
She vomited all over herself in the plane. I dressed her up so beautiful, and to go to California. She ruined all her clothes. She vomited on it. And then the next she came out there. I don't know when it was, Friday or when. And the next day your father called and he said to me, "Hello, Mom." He says, "We just got married." Yeah.
So that was your new son?
Yeah.
That was your first son?
That was.
Oh, actually.
We said, he says, "We just got married." And then his mother insisted that they get married in Jewish.
They didn't, their original marriage, go back a little. Their first marriage was not a Jewish wedding.
No, it was just by, in court when you go for your papers. And then they had a Jewish wedding. They sent me the pictures. They had a rabbi there and everything. The pictures, they had a Jewish wedding too.
And did Doris get married?
And made it for them a party. It was very nice.
Did Doris get married before Elaine?
No, Elaine got married first.
Tell me about her wedding.
Her wedding was beautiful. Arnold, do you know Arnold?
Yes, I know.
Arnold's parents paid half and I paid half. And we had beautiful wedding. It was just beautiful. Everything just beautiful, beautiful. You know, a catered affair. And everybody was in gowns. And it was very nice, beautiful. But I think I have a picture. If I'm in this, what's her name? If Harrison wanted a picture of Grandpa, and I said I didn't have one. I think that I have. I must show you that those pictures are beautiful.
Okay.
If I come with me, if I could get it.
Bring them out here.
That's Elaine. Somebody must.
Can I see it?
I think so. It must be.
No.
Wait, no,
Leave me alone.
show that picture.
I don't know. There. I got more. That one looks like Susie. And there's Elaine. Here is Elaine. Here. Oh. That's me. When I was young, look. And that's me again.
Grandma Jean.
And there's Penny. That's Penny. Hey,
All right, here's what.
I have a wedding. I'm looking for the
This
picture.
is Grandma as a young woman.
This is nice. That's me and Elaine.
Okay.
You tell her.
This is Kenny. As a little schmendrick.
Certificate of
This is
marriage.
Elaine as a bride and Grandma Jean, Elaine's mother.
Good, you tell them. That's Kenny. I didn't know I had all these pictures. Do you know that?
Okay. Arm's gonna break. This is Kenny as a baby. I think this is it. Here's Aunt Elaine and Grandma Jean's sister, Augusta.
Oh, look at me. That's Elaine and me and Grandma Jean. This must be Elaine.
This is Aunt Elaine and Grandma Jean, her mother.
I'm looking to see for Ben. I can't find him.
Let me see this one right here.
Oh, that.
Grandma Jean's great-granddaughter. This is Doris and Marty.
Mr. H had to have.
Rachel's brother.
That's Rachel, isn't that Rachel?
Yeah. They drive.
There's your. Do you want any of them? You can have it.
And
Who's that, Rachel?
yeah, I like this one.
I don't have what's his name? Brian. That's him.
This is Grandma Jean Mursky and Grandpa Ben Mursky on their wedding day.
You
No,
can
no.
name.
What about this one?
Who is that? I don't know. Let me see. I can't see.
Dee's mother.
Okay.
And we think the
Where's
girls,
my
the little
parents?
girl's
Where's
Elaine
my parents' picture?
on your bed.
Oh, yeah? All right, let me take it.
This is Grandma Jean Mirsky and Grandpa Ben Mirsky on their wedding day.
Who was your first grandchild?
Susan. Susan was first, and then it was you, Kenny. After Kenny, it was Barbara, and then Amy. Amy was the baby.
What was Susan like?
Susan was a darling. She was beautiful. She had such tiny little features, her tiny little feet, and she looked like a doll. She was very, and Barbara was ugly. She had a long face, and I didn't like, so I told Grandpa Ben, I said, she's so ugly. So he said, you'll see, she'll be beautiful, and it's happened.
Yeah.
She was so beautiful when she became a year, and she was just gorgeous.
Yeah.
All right, and what about the boy?
And Kenny,
That
when he
one.
was born, the doctor said, that's a special boy, belongs to me. He said, and the nurse, when we took him home, they said, he's just gorgeous. So my husband said to her, you tell that to all the children. She said, no, she said, he happens to be a special child.
Uh-huh.
But he was
Yeah, they
a
have
few
class
days
for those.
old, and he got a rash. They put him by himself in a room
Really?
because the doctor, they had to isolate him, and they didn't know whether they'll be able to circumcise him. But the rash went away, and he was circumcised. Yeah. Because they were, if the rash didn't go away, they would wait till they
Right.
circumcised him. I'm going to take two Tylenol, so I got terrible headache. Terrible. Oh,
I could eat them all.
eat them.
I will.
There's a whole bag full there. They're yours. You bought them.
Grandma,
Yeah.
if you could say one thing to Elaine, what would it be?
What would I say?
Yeah. If you're the oldest in the family, and what's your advice to everyone? If you could say one thing to Elaine, what would you tell her? Look into the camera and say it.
She's a good girl. I love you. And that's about all.
Would you change anything?
Now, and John is very, very nice too.
Are you happy with the way everything turned out?
Very nice. I like John, I like Elaine, and I like Marty. Marty's like my son.
Let's go back.
And,
Toaster oven.
yeah, that's what I'll do. I bought some too, and you bought, how long did they stay?
A long time. Weeks.
Yeah?
Yeah, potatoes stay a long time.
And I was about 10 years when I came to this country. What is a 10-year-old? And besides, and I'm an old lady, how can I remember all that?
You must remember something, but probably not much.
Don't remember anything. I just don't remember nothing.
Do you remember the boat? It must have been exciting.
I remember we were vomiting, we were sick, and that's all I can remember. But I don't remember it. Don't forget I'm an old lady. It's so many years ago.
Mhm.
I don't remember much. Don't remember nothing about the country that I was born, not a thing.
Right. You don't remember being in school when you were little? Nah.
No. Do you remember anything?
A little, very little.
So there. And you're a young woman. Wait till you get older, and then you wouldn't remember.
Yeah.
Of course not. It's just, now you're still young,
Mhm.
so you remember.
I
But
know.
when as you get older, you don't see it. you don't remember anymore.
Yeah, you probably remember more about living here, growing up and being a teenager.
Even here, I don't remember too much that I went to school and everything. I don't remember much.
Right.
I don't. What can I tell you? So some people don't remember what they have for breakfast.
Do you remember when you first got to this country, if it seemed very different than when you were home in Romania?
I don't remember that either because a child doesn't care. I mean, you
Right.
don't really care.
You just want to see who your
You
friend is going
don't
to
care
be.
wherever your parents take you, but you don't give a care if it's, let me take that plate away from you.
Here.
Yeah,
Put
sit down.
it in the kitchen.
Did you live in an apartment when you got
We
here?
lived with my uncle and aunt in Harlem just for maybe, I don't know for how long. And then my father took an apartment.
Right.
But we lived in Harlem.
Uh-huh.
You know where Harlem is?
Yeah, it's in Manhattan.
So it's all black now. So you finished with that? Good. You got enough?
Were there a lot of cars in the city then? Or horses and cars?
Any what?
A lot of cars in the city, a lot of traffic.
Sure.
Was there also horses and wagons a little bit?
No, I don't remember
Mostly
that.
cars?
No, I don't remember. Just cars they had,
Right.
but not.
And airplanes?
No, they
No, no
didn't have it
airplanes.
yet. I don't think so. Because if they had a plane, then we would come from Europe in a plane instead of the boat.
Yeah.
It's all water you go through.
Yeah.
So you can't. It's all water, you know. From you, so many days of water, and we had a fire on the ship, and we.
A big one?
And we got up in the morning, and it was such a riot there. Some people jumped off the boat. They were scared.
Wow.
And when we got up, it was all right. Everything was over.
Wow.
But there was a lot of them that died.
Uh-huh.
There was a fire there that got drunk. I think, and they didn't watch there. I don't know what happened.
Right.
There's a
Right.
big fire there.
What year was that around?
I don't know. I really don't know. So many years.
Yeah.
I don't know. And besides, when you're young, you don't care. You don't.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother you. What?
You probably start remembering more once you got married. Then you're grown up and you remember more.
Yeah, you remember more already when you get married.
Yeah.
And yet I don't remember everything, but I remember much more when you're grown up, you know.
Like you remember where you and Grandpa Ben first lived?
We didn't have no apartment. His sister had an apartment, and she she had a place in the country. So she was in the country, so she gave us the key to stay in our apartment until we got an apartment.
Right.
And then we got an apartment.
Right. Was that also in Harlem or was that in Brooklyn? Or Bronx?
In the Bronx,
Right.
yeah.
So by then you
Where did you
moved
live?
out.
Did you ever live in it?
I was born in Brooklyn, I think.
Oh, Brooklyn?
Where's Kings County Hospital? That's where I was born.
Ah,
And then when I was just a couple of months old, my parents moved up to the house I live in now.
oh yeah?
Yeah, so I don't remember anything of that.
Oh,
I
you
just
don't?
remember, no, I just remember the house. I was a little baby.
See, I gave birth in one place, but both kids, I don't remember the name. It was like a, just for giving birth with. I forgot.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a big hospital. It was a hospital, but a small place,
Right.
just for
Maternity?
maternity, yes.
Wow.
But I forgot the name. But it was nice.
How long did you stay in the hospital?
8 days.
Wow, that's
And in
great.
bed. And the nurse left me off the 8 days, and the doctor came and gave her an argument.
Huh.
And today they don't even keep her in bed anymore.
No. They
Yeah,
send you
and
home
they-
in one day.
Susan was home the next day.
I know.
She came home, she gave birth like today, and tomorrow she's going home.
Yeah, I
I
know.
did
It's
like that.
something.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, it's not enough.
And then Elena and John were there, they helped her. That
Mhm.
was really a shame. She just gave birth,
That's what they do.
and they send you home. How in the world do they, you can die like that? Because it's really ridiculous. They should keep you, and he wouldn't eat, he was like that. He was so thin. So he wanted him to have a bottle before he went out. He wouldn't take it, he wouldn't. So Marty got very mad and he threw the bottle on the walls and he broke the bottle and the milk went all over the walls.
Huh.
He got mad because he
Right.
wouldn't take the bottle. And
Right.
that is something, but he wouldn't, he was very thin.
Uh-huh.
And then he had a doctor, Dr. Levy, so Darvis kept, and he was a short man. I don't know how short he was, maybe as tall as me.
Right.
So Darvis kept asking him about Kenny, will he be short, will he be short? And he asked him once and twice, I don't know what he told her. And one day she asked him, so he said to her, look, he says, I'm short, and I made something out of myself. He was a doctor, a pediatrician. And he saved Amy's life.
Really?
Amy was throwing up and throwing up. She couldn't take her bottle. She kept throwing up. She took her to the doctor. The doctor said she needs an operation. That after 6 weeks, girls get like that. She was
Right.
an infant. So, and she kept, so the others was crying and she couldn't feed her. She couldn't feed her where she was throwing up. She took the bottle and she threw it right up. So I said, I'm going to call Dr. Levy. And Levy had looked at her already and one. So they all said to me, and even my husband said, what do you want to wait to call him for? He looked at her, there's nothing they can do. I said, well, I'm going to call him just to say. I called him up, and he said, no, she is dehydrated.
Right.
Do you know that we'll have to get her to the hospital immediately? They got her into the hospital. She didn't need no operation. The formula was too strong for her.
Right.
They had to make her a much weaker formula.
Right.
She was an infant, a few days, weeks old. So they made her a much weaker formula, and she took it, but she still was throwing up. It wasn't, it wasn't as bad.
Right.
But but he saved her life. She would have died.
Yeah. Would've been
Because it's very
dehydrated.
easy for an infant.
To
If you
dehydrate.
don't take good care and you don't give them the right thing, it's very easy for them to go.
Uh-huh.
So he,
How did we all move up to the country?
what?
Who moved up to the country first, to Rockland County?
To Rockland County? Elaine was the first one. She went to where did she live
Hempstead.
no,
Rensselaer Drive.
where she lived there and then Darvis moved there?
How come Elaine didn't move to Long Island?
I don't know.
Rockland's better.
She lived there, and then I came when my husband died, so I went to live with Doris.
Mm-hmm.
I lived with her a couple of months, and then I took an apartment,
Right.
and also in Spring Valley.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful apartment, $175.
Wow.
You can't get it today.
Did you miss New York?
Yes, I miss